and outcomes of that time away. Having seen the report, I'm really excited about what he's been up to and the things that we're going to learn today. Jeremy is an interdisciplinary artist and textile designer whose work spans fiber, ceramics, surface design, and emerging AI-assisted processes, which I'm super excited about. He is a professor of studio art and craft and the section lead of fiber and textiles here at CCS. His presentation is titled Hybrid Practices Integrating Ceramics, Textile Design, and AI, and we are excited to welcome him up, and I'm handing the stage over to him. Jeremy?
Thank you, Amy, for the introduction. Thank you for coming today for the Lunch and Learn session for my presentation called Hybrid Practices Integrating Ceramics, Textile Design, and AI. I'm starting this presentation by highlighting the object on the left. It's a wheel-thrown vessel using colored clay that I inherited from my grandmother's estate in 2006. This is 20 years ago. My grandmother moved to Pontiac, Michigan from Missouri in the mid-1940s. I believe she acquired this object from Evans Pottery during her journey and migration to Michigan. When I first laid my eyes on the ceramic object 20 years ago, I thought, how cool would it be to translate this type of strata effect into repeating pattern? We'll return to this idea in a little bit. This is me, age 3, one of my early artworks. I was born in Pontiac, Michigan. I spent a lot of time with my maternal grandmother while my mother worked multiple jobs. My grandmother was a prolific crocheter of Afghans, dolls, and domestic objects. Watching her repetitive, patient labor shaped my understanding of material intelligence and pattern as embodied knowledge. While she crocheted, I experimented with drawing, making sculptural objects out of Scotch tape, and finding ways to build acrylic yarn environments with the scraps from her crocheted pieces. Unknowingly, this was the beginning of a practice that was rooted in domestic traditions. What I've learned in my grandmother's living room was this: systems and constraint generate variation. Before I move into my design background, I want to clarify a couple things about how I work. My practice moves between two modes. At times, I use fiber-based techniques to create artwork. I also paint, draw, collage, and use photography. Themes within my artworks center on identity, relationships, desire, shame, pride, and loss. In this mode, the textile logic is embedded in the structure of the object. Other times, I create artwork specifically to live on textiles: pattern, repeat, digital collage, translation to industry. In this mode, the artwork becomes surface, system, and product. For me, the most generative space is not choosing one over the other. It is the space where art and design intersect through the fiber and textile lens. Hybrid practice emerges where these two modes intersect. Before returning to academia to teach, I worked in automotive textile design, contract upholstery, home design, and later through my own studio collaborating with manufacturers and distributors. I developed a love for creating and developing the artwork that goes onto the surface. Industry shifted my understanding of design. I moved from thinking about singular objects to thinking about interconnected systems. Surface became inseparable from production, scale, and circulation. Industry taught me to think structurally. In industry, design is not about singular objects, it's about systems. Designing repeat patterns requires thinking in units. Every motif must connect seamlessly at its edges. A small decision propagates infinitely. Repeat design operates through rule-based logic. In manufacturing, design operates within infrastructure. Patterns are engineered to function across materials, production runs, and markets. Colorway development becomes strategic. One system generates multiple outputs calibrated for different contexts. Working with manufacturers shifts authorship. Design decisions are shaped by machinery, timelines, cost, and distribution networks. The object is not autonomous. It exists within a network. What you are seeing here is repeat logic operating as a system. The original hand-woven paper construction establishes a rule set, not a fixed image. Once digitized, those rules generate variation through texture, structure, and color reduction. The design moves from a multicolor complexity to a monochromatic translation, allowing the weave structure to carry the visual information. By the end, the same logic scales into an industrial textile line, or color line, I should say. This is repeat logic in action, a system where constraints produce variation. I'd like to share a few examples that I've created in the past couple of years of translating system thinking into material experimentation. I approach textiles as cultural systems that carry meaning through repetition and motif. In Branch from the Tree of Life, I photographed individual plants from my yard and my community, digitally collaged them, and structured them into a repeat wall covering. The work draws from historical textile traditions like French textile paintings, Javanese batik, and Iranian prayer rugs, and positions the digital collage within that ongoing lineage. The result is both a personal archive and a pattern system. On the left is a heat-resistant fabric sewn into a vessel form and coated with graphite in the glass studio. The graphite prevents sticking and allows the textile structure to function as a temporary mold. On the right is a finished face. Thank you to Kim Hardy, a professor and section lead of glass, who had blown and finished this object. As the hot glass expanded inside the sewn form, it captured the textile's texture and structure. This collaboration brought together two distinct material systems. Fiber is stitched and flexible, and glass is molten and pressurized. Through this exchange, texture and form transferred from one material to the other, embedding the logic into textile, into glass. In this body of work, Volta, it explores electricity as both a material force and a cultural condition. Using plasma-cut steel, rust-dyed processes, and Lichtenberg figures, I was able to generate marks through direct electrical interaction. Working with electricity introduced me to risk and unpredictability. The material responds beyond the full control, foregrounding infrastructure itself as a creative agent. Leith Campbell was super helpful in helping me fabricate the metal sheets, and artist Joe Culver was instrumental in introducing me to this electrical mark making, which at times I thought I was going to die. These electrical and rust-dyed marks are then scanned and translated into repeating textile systems, where unstable energy becomes structured pattern. Electricity here is both a drawing tool and a metaphor, tracing how energy moves, accumulates, and leaves evidence over time. By translating discharge and corrosion into the textile form, I slow and stabilize these forces, connecting industrial processes with material practice. In the winter of 2025, following 11 years of full-time service, I was awarded a sabbatical from the College for Creative Studies. The sabbatical allowed me to pursue focused research, bridging ceramics and textile design, and to investigate how AI might intersect with and expand my creative practice. During the sabbatical, I began testing how ceramics, textiles, and AI could intersect. I started my sabbatical by jumping back into gouache painting as a means to generate images that were reflective of the ceramic objects I had been exploring at that time. The translation felt too basic for me, and I needed to pivot to something that offered a new challenge. I shifted toward nirakomi, a Japanese technique of layering colored clay to generate patterns within the ceramic body. I first start by mixing mason stains into the porcelain clay body. And Claire Thibodeau, section lead of ceramics, introduced me to mason stains in early 2024. And it kind of festered for a couple years until I was able to jump in the pool and play. Color in clay is not immediate. It is iterative, it's slow, and built through testing, firing, evaluation, and revision. The color of the clay gets deep and more saturated through the firing process. You're looking at one of my mini textiles. What appears simple is actually the result of hours of labor and weeks of calibration. I began with colored clay and Pantone references as visual anchor. Pantone gives me a target, but the clay does not behave like ink on paper. I mix precise ratios of clay and stain, carefully documenting each variation. At this stage, the color you see is deceptive. The color results remains unknown until the material moves through time and firing. Each test becomes an evaluation. I compare the outcome back to the original Pantone reference and my own sensibility, adjusting the next iteration accordingly. Here, pattern is not applied to the surface, it is embedded into the structure of the clay. And for that, I find a relationship between jacquard weaving and nirakomi ceramics. Layering clay, slicing it, pressing it into form, this process is also system-driven. It operates through repetition, constraint, and variation. Clay becomes a physical algorithm. It operates through sequence, repetition, and constraint. But instead of code, the logic is enacted through clay, pressure, shrinkage, and fire. The process is highly structured. You layer, you compress, slice, rotate, reassemble. This is what I mean when I describe a work being a physical algorithm. The system is predetermined, but the material always introduces subtle shifts. Shrinkage, pressure, and firing deepen and slightly alter the color during the firing process. The final result is both controlled and contingent. Pattern here is not illustration, it is structure. This is an image of the clay before it was bisque fired. I used photography. At this stage, I used to photograph and develop the first textile design, which I'll get back to in a few minutes. This is the first ceramic form that I followed through process of color matching and to the final output of firing. The form is slightly wonky due to the elasticity in the clay. I quickly changed the type of clay I was using for something that had less grog or less elasticity in it to prevent it from moving in the kiln. This meant revisiting the mason stain recipes and matched to the Pantone color references with a new clay. So starting all over again. These vessels represent iterative investigations in pattern embedded within the form. These ones are a little more symmetrical. These ones aren't nirakomi process at all. These are me experimenting with airbrushing and removing off the surface of the material. So the image on the left is airbrushed acrylic on board, and the other is airbrushed underglaze, which I then wipe off before it's fired. Creating a pattern for textiles is a visual puzzle where aesthetics and strategy intersect. As I was exploring Narikomi with the clay, I began deepening my understanding of AI-driven tools, including DALL-E, Midjourney, and Photoshop Firefly. I began experimenting with prop writing as a creative methodology. Prompt language became a design tool. Small changes in descriptive sequencing altered repeat flow, motif density, and color behavior. I found that Midjourney was better at interpreting my prompts into visual language, but at the end of the day, it never quite got to what I was thinking in my mind. At the beginning of my sabbatical, I began making paintings where I used AI to in-paint, out-paint, refine edges, and resolve repeat structures. The image on the left, there's an intentional kind of repeat seam kind of breakage. And on the right, I used Firefly, and it quickly kind of just generated some content from the original image and kind of stamped it in place. 10, 20 years ago, this might have taken probably 6 to 8 hours of time to fill that gap. With the colored clay explorations, my intention from the beginning was to dramatically enlarge the original scale of the translation into textile. I used 5 colors of colored clay that were layered, compressed, distorted, before rolling them into long tubes. The cross sections were cut along the length of the tube, and those pieces were shaped into diamonds before being joined together. I photographed the clay slabs with high-resolution camera before the clay was formed and fired. The digital image was enhanced for saturation of color. I scaled it up and placed it into repeat. I discovered several areas in the original artwork where my eye kind of got stuck in the rhythm of the design, where it kind of stopped in areas where the line work was too heavy, and other areas where the visual information was illegible and needed some further refinement. On the left is the original image. Clay was smudged in this area and would have to be redrawn improvisationally to make the line work crisper. On the right, I used AI to generate a solution that would fit in the surrounding motif and kind of fill in that space. And I think it did a good job of kind of making a thing up out of nothing. Artwork created for textiles is often color-reduced for manufacturing. For screen-printed textiles, a textile would have to be made, or a screen would have to be cut for each color. In jacquard weaving, each color would represent a weave structure. And in knitting, each color would represent a series of knit or purl structures. At the present moment, AI is not good at taking a color-reduced image and in-painting while maintaining a crisp graphic. On the left is the original image, and on the right is the image after being redrawn, meaning I've gone in with a pen and redrew the whole thing. The craft of making an artwork manufacture-ready still requires an artist hand. When I create a pattern, I am working with the elements and principles of design to achieve a balanced distribution of visual weight. A successful pattern carefully controls pacing, where rhythm creates movement without becoming chaotic. Positive and negative space are equally important, and the ground or the space between the motifs become an active part of the design. Unlike a painting, a pattern rarely relies on a single focal point, so the composition must work seamlessly at the edges as it repeats. A good quality pattern should feel infinite and allow your eye to continue to move. The Post-it notes help me to identify areas on the printout to adjust where I need to fix the composition. This is one of maybe 7 or 8 printouts, and I do this to every artwork that goes into pre-production. On the left are a few colorways of the same artwork printed on paper. So I'm aware of the scale that the artwork should look like before it gets manufactured. And on the right are a few colorways of the artwork that are woven into a jacquard tapestry construction. So 1-to-1 scale, and gives a good indication of what it should look like when it's completely woven. This slide represents the heart of hybrid practice. Digital output becomes tactile material, and material becomes a source of digital refinement. The loop continues. These artworks were exhibited at Design by Desire, curated by Kristen Richard during the Detroit Month of Design last September at CCS in the Center Galleries. Ceramics enhanced textiles and woven structures coexisted in one physical space. Here, clay becomes artwork, artwork becomes a digital pattern system, and the digital becomes material again. Here, clay becomes, the analog AI analog loop becomes central to my sabbatical research. This installation demonstrated that digital and physical materials are not oppositional, they are integrated. I'd like to share a few thoughts on AI as I go through a few images from my trip to Japan last year. And so I left almost a year ago today and was there for about 2.5 weeks, and huge impact on how I view just about everything. The sabbatical reinforced something important. The beauty and subtlety of handmade work remains unrivaled. Yet when used critically and intentionally, AI can expand creative possibility. AI should be understood as a partner in remixing and reimagining, not as a replacement. I used AI to organize all the places I wanted to visit during my travels to Japan. I asked AI many questions to fine-tune my itinerary. I included time outside the itinerary to be present, to follow curiosity, and to be responsive to my surroundings. Discovery allows knowledge to move from concept to sensation. Through repetition and material response, understanding becomes physical, intuitive, and internalized. I have my reservations about AI because it's information collecting. Its gray areas regarding authorship and copyright, and its lack of process traceability. AI expands the field and vision of visual discovery, but authorship emerges through judgment, translation, and material engagement. I view the most recent body of work being positioned at the intersection of contemporary craft, design innovation, and critical engagement with emerging technologies. Hybrid practice is not about blending media. Hybrid practice is about the translation of systems across material, digital, and conceptual boundaries. By bridging hand traditions and emerging technologies, I hope to contribute to a culture where innovation and craft can coexist. Thank you so much. Any questions? Ian?
I've got hundreds of questions and lots of comments, but I'll keep it to one. Thank you very much. That was a really mesmerizing presentation. I really enjoyed it. Just looking at the work alone, it was really exciting, but your commentary about process really brought it to life as well. It's really exciting to hear. Thank you very much. What you've got here is a huge amount of discovery, because you described the process as research, and you have presented to us a body of work that represents new insight and new knowledge, because we're at, particularly with AI, we're at a new frontier as practitioners, and you've ventured into it. And what I can see from the way that you've used it, it does seem to have quite a strong ethical framework. I don't think you're using it in an exploitative way. You're using it in a very productive way. But it is new knowledge and insight that you presented to us. This is how we as creatives, as artists and designers, generate and make a contribution to new knowledge. So that's my comment, but my question really is, can this body of work, this is the type of work that we need to be showing in our research repository, because it is how we contribute to knowledge. And this is very powerful and important, and it's been disseminated. And I think you could take it even further with your dissemination, but it's just superb. Thank you. But my question is, can you put it in the research repository? Will you?
Will you? I haven't really thought about that. My idea would be to expand on what I've started and work with a manufacturer, distributor, or maybe a retailer to get these things into a livable space, and maybe outside of a gallery scenario where they would kind of maybe sit. But I like the things I designed to play with the world that they live in, and that's maybe that's just too narrow-minded. But I do think that they are artifacts of kind of a process that engages technology in a new way.
Yeah, for sure. And there's impact there as well.
Boy, I really loved the color palette, Jeremy, that you use and the experimentation on the patterns. My question is, this is a wonderful presentation. What would be your advice to the current students about the use of AI, some advice you would give them, because they're coming into it differently than the rest of us, and it might be good to hear you. And I know tomorrow at Student Assembly there's maybe some questions about AI and our use and how we use it, not use it, and I think what Ian said is important about intentionality with it. But do you have some advice that you could share that we can make sure we pass on to all of our students about your journey with AI?
Well, I'm coming into AI already having multiple decades of textile kind of centered focus, and so I kind of have a reverence for the old way of doing things. And so I think that one is, because you can type in a prompt and get an output, it doesn't mean that you are an expert in that, whatever the output's supposed to be. Whether it's illustration or entertainment art, figure drawing, or textile design, or any sort of visual output, I think that there needs to be some sort of understanding or reverence for the foundation that's kind of led this technology to kind of cover a lot of different fields that are creative centered. So I feel like AI is not going to allow you discovery through making. AI is really, I think that you need to spend time with personally, I feel like physical materials is where you need to spend your time at, and processes that are maybe a little more cumbersome to get you through a little bit of that learning curve, and also the embodied knowledge that comes from doing things manually, and then jump into AI and see what you can kind of exploit within maybe the existing boundaries of that profession. But I don't think AI is a creative thing. It's a tool. It's not a creative thing. It can allow you to produce images and graphics, but I think you need to have a more thorough understanding of the history of that field before jumping into AI as your final solution.
Thank you. I really appreciate the term, embodied experience and knowledge that AI does.
Yeah. Maybe some things I'm working on right now. I'm working on an exhibition for Inseca, which is happening the end of March. Using one of my designs here in a different colorway and a completely different output than I maybe expected to run in. But I'll be exhibiting at the Ceramics and Fiber Collaborative Exhibition. There will be a total of 120 artists in the Campbell Boyer Building during that kind of weekend-long event. And there's pairings between ceramic artists and fiber artists, and so the collaborations between each of those pairings will be kind of a unique thing. And in addition to that, I'm also kind of like building more of this work, so I have like a nice stack of things to share with potential clients. So.
That's all right. We encouraged the spread.
I have a technical question. When you were taking the pattern into AI, how did it work in terms of color separations and then scalability? Were you finding any challenges with that?
Yes. Yeah. And so I don't really understand. I know it's pulling from lots of things to generate an image, and it's not going to like increase the image quality by any means, going from small scale to large scale. So typically, I usually design much larger scale, knowing I can shrink things, but going the opposite way doesn't really kind of work in that way. So scalability is like, yeah, you can't like make up something that's not there. I feel like it produces an image kind of like a hot dog. It's like taking all these things and then it like generates a like just neutral kind of graphic. It's not crisp and beautiful like you would kind of want that for maybe images in your environment. And then the other thing for color reduction, that process I do manually outside of AI. Now you could kind of take an artwork with a set parameter of like Pantone color references or hex numbers and ask AI to like recolor a thing. It does sometimes alter the image in addition to recoloring that. And so I'm still a baby at the wordsmithing of getting like the most accurate outcome. But I think AI also just, it makes choices beyond maybe what you want. So I think every parameter you can provide it, whether it's boundaries or open areas for interpretation, it will always find ways to interpret what you're presenting, even without language that is a more conflicting or more boundary centered. So I don't find it to be conducive for color reducing or scaling up our work.
Any other questions? Val?
Hey.
Jeremy, really nice presentation, and boy, it's just got me pondering like some of those really 20th century abstract pattern painters, and just like wondering like how that language of their work is sort of maybe in AI now, and it's actually kind of helping generate that voice, which is kind of interesting, right? It's sort of like that sort of AI, you're talking about the prompts.
Mm.
I'm trying to figure out a way to form this question about intuition and improvisation in relationship to AI. Like how, and especially when I think about, painting in particular, because it is such an immediate process, and there's so much that's about intuition and improvisation, specifically when you talk about pattern and color. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, is there a place in this process, in your process, for improvisation and spontaneity, or how does that function
Yes.
in the world of prompts?
I think prompt writing, the more your written prompt is addressing multiple kind of contingencies, you'll get closer to what your vision might kind of be, and it's a might, because a lot of times it kind of will output something and you're just like, this is not at all what I had in mind. And so there's a disconnect, I feel like, between maybe what I have in mind and what the computer generates for me. But in those moments, I think that there's opportunity for me to look at what the output is and say, okay, there might be something special here. Or maybe it's allowing me to think about how I work with the clay differently to generate an image that could maybe be in tune with what the output is. And so I do think there's a place to play with it, but at the end of the day, it never quite aligns with what I'm thinking the output should be. It's just a generative way of seeing possibility, And so I think for me, I've used it like a janitor to do my bidding for cleaning. And I've also used it to kind of like maybe point me into a direction. But like between those two places, it's really murky and not exciting. And then toward the end of like actually making the thing and letting it be the janitor of my cleaning up, I just don't find it to be that exciting or in a creative aspect. But you know, I've used AI in different ways through my sabbatical. Like, for example, I have a local community gym, and I took note of all the different types of equipment that were there. I input information about like my body type, my age, and what I'd like to maybe achieve, and it really gave me a thorough like fitness regimen, and that was kind of an exciting thing to do that without having you know, a physical trainer or anything like that. And then for my trip to Japan, there were so many places I wanted to see, and jumping from city to city, I needed to kind of aggregate the locations in a tight space. And so feeding in an algorithm, being conscious of like when the sun comes up, when it goes down, when do certain things open and close, how can I put things in close proximity, what trains to take to get there to be most efficient with my time. It's really great on taking all these kind of bits and pieces and churning out a very systematic way to move through space. And it's also allowed me to be efficient with my kind of daily ritual of health and wellness. And so I think in those aspects, AI is like tremendously on point, like of organizing complexities. But when it comes to the creative process, I think discovery through making, for me, is the most important. And I think AI is really just there to kind of assist with very specific stages. Up front, maybe in the cleaning in the middle, and then at the end, you just depart from it and part ways, you know.
Thanks also for raising the importance of sabbaticals for research.
I would have never been able to spend that much time mixing clay, waiting for things to dry, waiting for textiles. And so even that allowed me to spend time with a community of people that I would not have access to, who was able to give me, you know, clay tips and tricks in ways that maybe, you know, not having that access wouldn't allow me to be informed, you know, through that time. So, no, it's hugely, a sabbatical is hugely important, and I'm kind of sad it took so long to get to that point where I could take one. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
I do have a quick thank you so much for this, Jeremy, and also to Val's point, want to point out your identification of it as janitor. I feel like that's incredibly powerful. James Garvey and I are going to an AI conference in Florida in June, and through part of his lens, we're looking at how language and metaphors impact our working relationship with AI, and how metaphors can either disempower the human part in the creative aspect or empower the human part. And when you said janitor, I'm like, oh, I'm going to cite you, but I'm going to talk about this aspect of how, as visual artists and designers, the way we frame what we do with AI does impact our relationship. And if we call it a janitor, we're in charge, not it.
Yeah.
You know exactly what it is. You are empowered to change it. It's that human agency, the one who has to make the decisions, the uncomfortable decisions, and learn how to navigate that, as opposed to if we call it a collaborator, then we're giving it agency.
Yeah.
And we have to be really mindful about that in our classrooms, and you can keep that for tomorrow too, Don. But anyway, thank you for that. That's fabulous. I'm so excited. Very much appreciate your work, your time here. Thank you all for coming, and can't wait to see where your work goes from here.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.